All right, my good friend Chris Martinez with Bloom Partners in the house today and
What's
soon to be
up?
yours. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be on again. Although
Yeah,
this
man.
time the exciting news is I'm representing a new brand, which is really exciting. So
Yeah.
excited to share that.
And preparing for this call, I've been kind of seeing all the work that you put in Bloom and kind of the strategy behind it and what your frame of mind is. So it's very exciting. I want to talk about that. I feel it's need of the hour of for what you guys are trying to do right now. And but yeah, just walk us through a little bit, Chris. What's the journey been like? Who are you?
hmm
And who is Bloom Partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, my name is Chris Martinez. I'm the CEO and founder of Bloom Partners. And before this, I had a company called Dude Agency, which is probably what everybody knows me for. And we launched Dude in 2017, and basically prior to launching Dude, I had found a way to recruit and hire designers and developers and project managers in Mexico, specifically in Tijuana, Mexico. And back in 2017, even though it was 7 years ago, it was a very different environment in digital marketing. And so we had set up a company in Mexico. At the time, I was driving back and forth across the border from San Diego to TJ every single day, which most people are not willing to do. And we decided, you know what? What if we can help agencies get access to this hidden talent pool in Mexico? So we launched Dude. It took off pretty quickly, and we were basically playing matchmaker for agencies in the US and Canada with this talent pool of designers and developers. And we would hire and recruit and train. And because we had the company in Mexico, we could offer benefits and we knew the culture and lots of different things. And so that company did very well. I mean, we got to multiple seven figures and generated lots and lots of revenue and won a bunch of awards as well. Um, but maybe this is something that will resonate with your audience and yourself. It's like we started to get questions from the agencies that were a little bit different than the, like I need a designer, I need a developer types of questions. They would ask us like, how do I improve my processes? How can I improve my profitability? How do you guys have such great communication? Can you show me how to do that? I want to scale my business. I have questions about a leadership team and all these like what I call non-sexy parts of running an agency.
Hmm.
The agency started coming to us for those types of answers because they saw how well we were doing it. And of course, we would provide them those answers, and that eventually evolved into us doing some more like consulting for those agencies. And then around late 2022, early 2023, we started to recognize, hey, this could be a really cool pivot for the business. And when we think about what we want to be known for, or kind of like a mission for the company, right, or a vision for the company, we started to think or to recognize, hey, this would be a lot cooler than just providing the relationships and connecting people in
Hmm.
Mexico with the agencies. Like what if we could help these agencies scale in a much more bigger way and help them to eventually get to an eight-figure valuation and then do an exit?
Hmm.
Because our industry is the agent marketing agency industry has been evolving over time. It's still a very new agency or industry, maybe let's just call it 20, 25 years
Yeah.
that digital marketing agencies have existed,
Yeah.
right? And we're at that point where the industry is evolving and it's growing up. And now you've got these businesses that are legitimate assets, and an agency owner that's been doing this, they might think about doing something else. And so whenever that time comes, we can help them get there. So that's where Bloom came from. It was really just us recognizing that the impact that we could have on the world and our industry was a lot bigger than the outsourcing piece. And so we decided to, hey, let's start making this transition. We started moving all of our outsourcing clients to work with our agencies directly. And then in just a few weeks ago, we did the big rebrand and
Hmm.
rebranded ourselves as Bloom. And so with Bloom, we combine management, consulting, and technology to help grow profits and increase efficiency and help these agencies to realize their potential and ultimately build an asset that they can sell and do an 8-figure exit.
So
And what's really
kind of like the McKinsey of agency world.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going for. Just a little bit more fun, I would say. Like
Yeah,
our agencies are more relaxed. They're not like suited
yeah,
up and like
yeah,
all
yeah,
serious.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we bring that, help them to professionalize their businesses, but also maintaining the culture, and ultimately helping those businesses get through a lot of these hurdles that they experience once they get to around the million revenue range. Because here's another thing that we see. There's a lot of agencies that come to us and they have that 7-figure title, right? From the
Mm,
revenue standpoint,
mm,
but they're not very profitable,
yeah.
and they're definitely not as profitable as they should be. We want to see 30% or better in the net.
Mm.
They've done an amazing job. Like these are incredible entrepreneurs. Running an agency is like the hardest thing that you could possibly do, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've done an amazing job growing the business and getting past the product market fit, kind of like that startup stage. And they've got some good systems in place, but then they get stuck, right? They hit the ceiling and they can't figure out what's going on. And so then a lot of them come to us at that stage, and we help them to get the systems and processes in place and all that non-sexy stuff that they just don't know, right? And
Yeah.
that's where the really, really cool like results are happening. So I had to write these numbers down because I can't remember them off the top of my head. So we did a study recently, right before we launched Bloom, and this was like another catalyst for rebranding. Is in the first 90 days of working with us, we're seeing revenue increase by 18.71%, which is good,
Mm.
right? First 90 days. But what's really cool is the gross margin. So we're seeing the gross margin improve by 39.47%
Mm.
in the first 90 days. And what's amazingly cool is that the net is improving by 234.9% on average with the clients that work with us in the first 90 days. Now,
Wow.
it's pretty impressive. So, what that means, obviously, the clients are making a lot more money in the first 90 days. But what that means is that there's a lot of, let's just call it low hanging fruit that's out there where we can make some massive improvements really, really quickly.
Mm.
And then obviously they're going to continue to improve, but it doesn't take a long time for them to get a return on investment. And that's
Yeah,
the benefit of having somebody that has done this dozens and dozens of times
yeah,
and knows how to work with your team, because every agency is a little bit different.
yeah.
We actually go in and work with these agencies one-on-one. It's not a group setting where we say, hey, here's this training, watch it. But we literally embed ourselves into your team. We help with the implementation and the execution. And that's why we're seeing these results.
Yeah, I think that's the need of the hour, man. And just having that immediate impact, right? We don't get too many, like you said, just Chris, the agency is a tough world. And a lot of agency owners, like, kudos to all the agency owners out there, man. It's a hustle, it's a grind
Mm-hmm.
for keeping the lights on for years. And some of these guys, like me, for example, been at it 15 years, running my
Mm-hmm.
own agency, right, in the trenches and going after those website projects, closing the deals so the bills can
Mm-hmm.
get paid and all of that stuff. But all of that stuff, when you get to a certain point, like you've put in the hard work
Yep.
where, you've earned the right to work with a company like Bloom Partners and Chris, because, like you've done the hard work, you've done the hustle, you've done the difficult things. And this, you cannot get to that point and just sign on a dotted line and work with a company like Bloom Partners and have that immediate 40% margin improvements in the next 90 days. You had to work for that, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're listening to this and you're at that point where you're around seven figures, and you're thinking that is there a better future? Yes, immediately there is relief, and you've earned the right for that because you've grown the business to this point. And just bring in a professional like Bloom Partners and have that immediate impact, right? You just mentioned about 20% on the revenue side, 40% on the margin side. as I continue to grow my business, I feel that the margins are more and more important, and I think this is going to
100%.
be a big part of our conversation today. So your focus has to start shifting towards being more and more profitable. So I love that. Thanks for what you're doing. Check out Bloom Partners. Chris is doing an amazing job there. Chris, I'd like to move into my next segment, which is the three more questions, and I've prepared these questions for you. And we're kind of going to lead into what we were just talking about. So, my first question to you is, how and why do you help agencies improve profitability versus more focus on revenue? Like, why the
Yeah.
focus on profitability versus revenue? Because, historically, the agency owners that I know, we're all focused on the revenue, right? Like,
Yeah.
revenue is everything in the agency world.
Right. So revenue is obviously important. That's the gasoline that helps the car to run. But if you've been doing this business a while and you've gotten through that startup phase, right, and you start to recognize that there is potential here, you start to think, like, is this thing, what's the potential of this business? Like, and I think it's natural for everybody to wonder, what could I sell this for one day?
Hmm.
Because I think one of the most painful lessons, at least that I'd learned in the past, right? Because a lot of what we do, it's like, man, I wish that I had this back when I was running my business, and eventually I learned these things from struggles and also through mentors. But like, one of the things that's really, really frustrating is when you've been working your butt off and building this business and you're focusing on the revenue. But then you have a conversation with somebody and they want to, maybe you're interested in selling or you just want to get a valuation of the company. And they immediately go down to the net.
Hmm.
They look at your EBITDA and they're like, okay, I know you guys are working really hard,
Hmm.
but the EBITDA is not looking very good. Because anybody who's going to buy your business, they're going to look at it as an investor. They're going to look at it as an asset, and they're going to look at what's the net, what's
Hmm.
dropping to the bottom line. And they're going to give you a multiple on that. And so I have seen agencies that are doing million plus in revenue, and you look at the net and it's like nothing, right? And let's be clear as to how an investor or a buyer is going to evaluate your agency. They're
Hmm.
going to look at the net, but that net needs to, it's after all the expenses are paid, including yourself,
Hmm.
right? Now, there are some things called add backs. And if you're paying yourself a really, really good salary, and if somebody was to buy the agency and replace you, let's say you're paying yourself $500,000 a year. And to replace you, that person is going to cost $250,000. Well, then we can take that $250,000 delta and add that back down to the net. And
Hmm.
then you can get a better multiple on that, right? But the net is so unbelievably important because if you truly want to build a business that you can exit from and it be an asset and you get a really healthy multiple, I'm talking like 5, 6, maybe 7x on EBITDA, you
Hmm.
have to have healthy net. 30% plus is what we shoot for. 20% growth minimum year over year.
Nice.
And, like some of those other metrics that we'll look at is the gross margin, because that's a pretty important like initial KPI that if the
Hmm.
gross margin is off, then it's really difficult to have significant profitability in the net. But like I think every agency owner deserves to have a business that they could sell one day. And like some of this also comes, I played soccer for almost 40 years. And I've known guys that have played professionally and so on and so forth. And there's kind of like a saying that I heard in soccer that I loved. It says, eventually, like for the professionals, eventually you wake up and you don't want to wear shorts to work anymore. And it's kind of the same with running an agency. Eventually, you're going to wake up one day, you're going to be like, I'm ready for the next thing.
Hmm.
And the worst time to sell is when you have to sell, right?
Hmm.
Think about like the worst case possible scenario. Like you're running this business, multiple seven figures, and you or somebody that you love gets sick, and you just can't do it anymore, and you got to hand over the reins to somebody else. That is the absolute worst time to sell. The best time to sell is when you don't have to sell. And so we want you to structure the business so that it's so incredibly profitable. You've got amazing people that are essentially running the business without you. You're working maybe 30 hours a week by choice, right?
Hmm.
And the net is super, super healthy. And so if somebody wants to come in and buy your business, they're going to have to give you a really, really good offer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I'm making a ton of money, and the thing's humming along and I don't really need to sell it. So you're going to have to give me a really good multiple, right?
So you're saying that just get your base set up right so that not only are you ready for the next phase of growth so that we can get you those higher multiples in eight
Yes.
figures, but also be ready to, like at a because life can change, right? Like a
Life
life-changing
happens.
event can
Yep.
happen anytime. And what we thought was going to be our mission and everything, it could change. I agree, man. I've seen that
Yeah.
happen so many times,
I mean,
especially over the last 4 years.
my dad, this goes back to my own personal experience where my dad got sick with cancer in December of 2006. I
Hmm.
was 26 at the time. My birthday's in January. And so just out of the blue, he calls me and he says, I need you to come to the house. And it was one of those things where you knew that something was bad because he'd been kind of sick for a while, but they didn't
Hmm.
know why. We learned he had cancer. Long story short, a month later, he died of pancreatic cancer, January 10th, 2007, 3 days before I turned 27 years old. And that showed me how quickly things can change.
Hmm.
And I've never really talked about this before, but my dad was not super financially savvy. And so after he passed away, there were a lot of loose ends that we had to tie up for him.
Hmm.
And I know that if he knew that he was going to die at 59 years old, that he would have made a lot of different decisions. On his deathbed, he didn't talk about, the financial mistakes that he made.
Hmm.
But I know that if he knew what we would have to go through after his death, he definitely would have done things a bit differently financially, right?
Hmm.
So that's my own personal story and some part of the passion that I bring into helping these agencies to professionalize and run a profitable business because I personally have experienced a worst case scenario and I don't want
Yeah.
anybody else to go through that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So it sounds good on paper. Let me ask you this. This is a follow-up question here. Um, so this sounds great. Like I want to get to immediately be 40% more profitable, increase my revenues 20% and then more, and then get ready. I like all of this stuff. But how do you do it? Like,
Yeah.
like what's this management consulting? Is this
Yeah.
like a
Can I give you some stories, like
yeah,
some real
of
life
course. I
examples?
love
Okay.
that.
So there's an agency that we work with. They were doing pretty well, like $2-3 million in revenue. They did have some profitability. It was less than 20%, but it's better than 10.
Hmm.
And so they came to us, and like the first thing that we do with an agency is we'll look at their infrastructure. So we had a call with them, and we looked at their org chart, kind of like similarly to what we people do in like EOS,
Hmm.
but it's from an agency perspective, right? Because we only work with marketing agencies. So we analyze the team members, and one of the things that we'll do is we'll say like, okay, cool, you have this leadership team in place. What are some of the KPIs that they're responsible for? Is your operations manager tracking the capacity of the team? Do
Hmm.
they know what the gross margin budget is? And a lot of the times they have these great people in place, but they're not utilizing them the way that they should.
Hmm.
So we'll go through that live. It's all one-on-one, of course. Then the other next like super powerful thing is we get their numbers. So we have them send us at least 12 months of P&Ls, and we create this what's called a pro forma. It's essentially a very fancy financial planning document, and we analyze the trends and we look at their budgets and we say, okay, historically, your gross margin has been at 40%. The gross margin needs to be between 65 and 70%. So we're looking at the numbers, right? This is a facts, not feelings thing. The numbers are the way the numbers are, right?
Hmm.
And then we say, okay, based on what we're seeing, we need to make these small improvements. We need to reduce our COGS by 0.5% per month. We need to improve our sales by 3% per month, right? And we start to create these budgets and these plans. And we say, okay, cool. This is what we got to do. Now, this is why I love working with entrepreneurs that are past that startup stage, is because they're very good at getting stuff done. Like
Hmm.
I gave this agency a target. I said, hey, here's where you got to be. And what's incredible is that they end up exceeding the targets like tremendously.
Hmm.
And like, so like the operations manager, they need help. For the first time ever, they get a budget, right? And
Hmm.
so we go in with our team and we help that operations manager
Yeah,
to execute on
I
those
can
goals.
tell you, like people who get into like seven figures and just getting there, they ain't got no budgets, man. So
Yeah, I know. I know.
just that activity alone is huge, and even for companies like us, uh, we passed that mark some time ago, but even in multiple seven figures, that is still a process to come up with
Hmm.
those budgets. And you need someone really great in your finance team
Yep.
to be able to run those numbers and make sense of all the financial data that's coming in and
Yep.
pointing out to the team. But when that starts happening, it's a magical thing, I can tell you, Chris. And I think that's the need of the hour, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, we go in and we help every single agency, their leadership team will meet with them one on one and help them to implement and execute. And, the proof is in the pudding. Like, they're crushing these numbers, right? So, like, the one that I'm talking about, I know our average for net improvement is 234.9% in the first 90 days. These
Hmm.
guys were at like 350%. It was insane. They had to do a double take with the bookkeeper because the bookkeeper sent them the numbers, right? And we get
Hmm.
the numbers every month too. So we're like a second check. So we're,
Hmm.
looking at the budget and the forecast and we're saying, okay, cool, like everything's on track or things were a little bit off. But this agency owner had to do a double take because they got the numbers back and they're like, this can't be right. Like, this is too good. But that's
Love
the
it.
power of having these budgets, having a guide, right? Once
So,
you have those things in place, sky's the limit.
so is there like any tech that you're bringing to the table as well, along with the people that you guys monitoring and
Yeah.
helping set up the budgeting and all of that stuff? Is there like any
Yeah.
automations, processes that you bring to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give you some of like the easy ones. So dashboards and reporting, right? Making sure that that's all in place. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be super fancy. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like automated, but having those are really, really powerful so that you can see what's going on in the business at any time, right? And we're
Yeah.
tracking things, facts, not feelings.
Yeah.
Now with AI, this is where it gets really fun. Is we are constantly looking at technology and learning from other smart people too, and figuring out ways that we can improve efficiency using technology. Right? Like I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I don't know if you can tell by my cup. Um, and there's a sign back there too,
Love
or
it.
maybe it's over there. And so I see AI as everybody having their own personal C3PO.
Hmm.
Somebody that can punch coordinates into the Navicomputer for you and get things done a lot faster.
Hmm.
Now, we don't expect our agencies to do that all the time, although they do enjoy like researching those topics. But we come in and do that. Another really exciting thing that's happening right now is in project management. So all the project management systems that are out there are figuring out how to embrace and implement AI so that the process of setting up your project management system isn't
Hmm.
as cumbersome. Also tools like Trainual, right? So ClickUp is definitely doing this right now. Asana is doing it as well. Trainual is implementing AI. So we are constantly looking at ways that we can leverage these new technologies and improve efficiency. We'll start usually like we build out process maps for agencies and we'll look at, hey, where are the points where we're getting stuck? And then what can we do to fix that? Is it it's some maybe it's simple as like implementing a checklist, or maybe we can use AI, ChatGPT, something like that, to go in and a task that would take 5 hours, we can get it down to an hour, right?
Hmm.
Those are the things that we geek out about. I think a lot of agency owners that might like make their head hurt, but we love
Yeah.
those things, right?
That's the stuff that nobody wants to do and everybody needs to do, right? So
Hmm.
I'm glad that somebody's putting their foot down, and that's where like we from go from going from 1 to 5 million in revenues is this is exactly what it took, right? Like
Yeah.
having our dashboards, having everything dialed in, all the budgets and everything in between, and it's very tiring process if you're having to do it yourself. So if you can
Well,
get some help, yeah, I'd
you
go
know
for it.
what's really exciting though is because when you're in the trenches, it's not fun. But one
Hmm.
of the things that we do is we show them what's the valuation of the company. So
Hmm.
as we're executing on these not fun tasks, right? At the end of 90 days, we show you, hey, we did X, Y, and Z. And when you came to us, the valuation of the company was 2.8 million. And after 90 days, it's now at 3.2, right?
Hmm.
So that gives you a little bit of boost in terms of like your energy and like wanting to continue down this path. When you see that the company is actually like the valuation of the company is actually improving.
Love it. Yeah, I think everyone should be excited about this. My last question to you on this segment, Chris, is are are you helping agencies being more profitable
Hmm.
at the cost of not having to launch new services, or just
Hmm.
doing like a few things, or because these line of services are constantly upgrading in our line of work, right? There's
Hmm.
like right now it's Meta ads, it used to be Google ads,
Hmm.
and so all of that stuff. So in addition, we might need to do other things. So how do you balance that dichotomy?
This is a really, really good question. And obviously, like our industry changes very, very rapidly. This is the importance of having like a mission and an end goal, and specifically using the pro forma to map
Hmm.
out where we want to go. So
Hmm.
there's a couple things that happen in an agency environment. So one is we operate on monthly recurring revenue, right? And we also have churn. So you are growing the business, and let's say you have sales quotas and we're hitting our quotas. And if that sales quota doesn't change, eventually your churn, once you have a certain number of clients, your churn will equal the amount of new clients that you bring in.
Hmm.
It's just the way that it goes. It's a math thing. You'll be bringing in 5 clients, but because you have certain number of clients and your churn is at 3%, you're losing 3 clients every single month. So then you have to look at, hey, what do we have to do to fix this problem so that we can get unstuck? Well, maybe we have to increase the number of leads that we're generating and move up those quotas. So instead of 5 clients per month, we're going to move it to 7 clients per month.
Hmm.
So that's one thing that you can look at. But then sometimes you're like, this is the max that we can get to. So then maybe we have to look at introducing a new product, right? Maybe there's a new product that we can roll in that would be either an upsell or a new package that we could create. Maybe we also need to kill off an older package and get all those people that are on a lower tier into this new
Hmm.
package. The point is that you're also making those decisions with facts and not feelings, the numbers, right? And this is where I think it gets really fun as a CEO. Like as you become more seasoned, you get to think more strategically. It's not reactive. It's what levers can we pull and how is that going to impact the numbers and how we're going to grow the business,
Hmm.
right? And so like, one of the other things that you could look at is churn rates. So let's say one of your products, lower tier product, has a higher churn rate. Let's say it's at 5%, meaning that the clients are going to stay with you for about 20 months.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can figure out ways to lower that churn rate. And then you wouldn't need to create a new product. Maybe there's no way to improve that churn rate, but that lower tier product is essentially like the stepping stone to get to a higher tier product where you make better margins, right? And you have
Hmm.
lower churn. All of these factors you have to weigh, and then you can make decisions as to what to do next, right?
And having
So,
you guys there with the numbers pointing the
yep,
agency in the right direction, that hey, it might be an opportunity to launch SaaS here, right? Like
yep,
just niche down a little bit if you haven't done that. So just pointing
right,
out some of these obvious things which should have been done, but you
yeah.
haven't yet. And
Yeah,
like
well,
I
as advisors, our job is to literally come in and just give you those scenarios. Like, here
hmm,
are the different things that we can do. This is what the numbers are telling us. Here are
yeah.
the different things that we can do. Let's strategize on what you think makes the most sense,
Few
right?
years ago we got to work on our churn problem, and we already knew that we had a churn problem, but we did not identify exactly where it was
Hmm.
happening. And the day my finance guy told us about that, hey, we got to look in the first 90 days, or not even the first 90 days, the first 30 days. And we just started solving it problem backwards and
Yep.
started putting more processes and resources in those first 30 days, and then the first 90 days, and the first 6 months.
Yep.
So it's like, unless you have that picture in front of you, you're not going to be able to do that, right? You're just going to continue to spin your wheels.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. You got to grow, but strategically, what's working for other people, and then having Chris and his team on board. So is it like how do people engage with you, Chris? Is it a
Yeah.
retainer basis, or what does that look like? If you want to just quickly run over that.
To make sure, let's see, I don't know if we just lost audio. So the first thing that we do is we do a qualification call. It's about 15, 20 minutes. And we just see what's going on in the business and see if it's something that we can actually help you with, right?
Hmm.
Because if you're too early on and you don't really know who your customer is, or you don't have packages together, like some of these issues are a little bit too soon to engage with us. We know exactly who we can help. So we do that 20-minute call. And if we do decide it's a good fit, we'll do a business analysis. And that's where we'll look at the infrastructure of the company. We'll jump on a 1-hour call with you. We'll give you the org chart. We'll tell you all the KPIs that each person should be doing. We'll give you advice as to people that you need to bring on, or ways that you can improve that infrastructure. Then the second part of it, you're going to send us all the P&Ls. We're going to do a pro forma for you, and we're going to jump on a 2-hour call. And we're going to go through everything. We're going to go through things in your books that we were like, hey, I don't know if these are classified properly. You can go back to your bookkeeper and fix those things. But essentially, we're going to give you a complete roadmap of how to fix the agency and exactly what you need to do. And that's a one-time investment, right? It's $14.97. Money back guarantee. If you don't feel it's worth it, we'll just give you your money back, right? After that, you have the roadmap. Then we'll say, hey, do you want to see how we can help you fix that? Then we'll engage in a monthly agreement. It's 6 months to begin. Again, the first month, completely money back guarantee. If you don't feel like it's a good fit, I'll just give you your money back, right? After that 6 months, we know if you're a good investment for us, because we look at your agency as an investment, and here's why. We are looking at the long term. We're not going to be making money, that much money on the monthly, right? Our objective is to eventually become the company that helps to do the exit for you. My business partner, Alan Stewart, he is a CFO of a publicly traded company. He's done over $500 million in mergers and acquisitions. He loves this industry. A $50 million deal for him is like nothing, right?
Hmm.
And so once we get to a point where we recognize, hey, this is something that has potential to be sold, our minimum is 5 million. Our target is around 10 to 15 million for the exit. Then that's where we come in and we basically do all the work to get you connected with a buyer and negotiate and help you do the exit. And we take
Love
a
it,
commission on
man.
that. We take a commission on that. That's
Love
the
it.
long-term play.
I think that's a great strategic play for people who are thinking like this. I highly recommend at least jump on a 20-minute call with Chris and his team and check out what they got going on. Chris, I want to just leave with these three phrases with you really quickly, rapid fire, 30-second each, but I want to get your take on it quickly. What's your take on a good operational hack right now for an agency owner?
So that word hack I don't love that word hack. I would say in terms, well, there is no shortcut. You got to do the hard work, right? You got to do your push-ups. There's no way around that. But in terms of a hack, it's just get your cost of goods budgets and give those to your leadership team members. Give that to the operations manager. That's the hack.
Mm,
If they have a budget and you tell them, this is where I need you to be, they will figure out a way to do it. And they'll figure it out a lot faster if they have us, obviously.
love it. Get those budgets in, people. What about right person for the right job?
This is incredibly important. You can still lose with the right team, but you'll never ever win with the wrong team. So you
Mhm.
look at a company like Google and you see the steps that it takes for them to hire somebody. It's like a 2 to 3 month process. They have like 30,000 employees, 100,000 employees,
Hmm.
and they take their hiring process so seriously. I see
Hmm.
agency owners being like, "Oh, this person's really cool. Let's hire them." 2 steps maybe. I'm like,
Yes.
that's crazy. You have 10 to 50 employees. You need to be very, very diligent about who you bring into the company. You have to have the right
Exactly.
people in the right seats.
Yeah, yeah. And last one is data driven decisions.
This is everything. The new book that I'm launching at the end of the month or in a few weeks is called Facts Not Feelings.
Oh,
If you want to get to that next level, you have to learn to run the business from the numbers. Now, I'm not saying neglect your emotions, because we're human beings and we're all very emotional. And sometimes your emotions can alert you to something that's going wrong. But if you truly want to get to the next level, you need to think like a CEO and run the business from the numbers. It's so unbelievably important. Your emotions, your feelings will lie to you. It's just the
facts,
way that
not
it goes.
feelings.
Facts, not feelings, all day
Com-
long.
Coming soon. Chris, I
Yes.
really appreciate this, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Check out Chris and Bloom Partners. And until next time, Chris, thanks for doing this, man. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you, brother. You're the best.